Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying time is here. That's right, we're talking about Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from a weird, gross old cabin in the woods. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we're dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. So we're going to unpack all the goriest details of 1987's Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, in the hopes that a rando's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes we can make at their expense. And as always, there's only one person I trust that if I stomp on the head of a monster and an eyeball pops out, she'll make sure to catch it in her mouth. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
Yeah, she's just kind of fine after that, isn't she? I mean, like she's not like, it's not getting caught in her throat. That just goes right down the old gullet.
Yes. She doesn't have a ton of time for reflection, I think, is what's helping her in that circumstance. It's just one in a parade of crazy things that happens to Bobby Joe at that portion of the motion picture. So, it's just another wild ass fucking thing that happens.
I was thinking of a joke, and I'm like, this is another one of those things where I can't make a joke because that's how much I love this movie.
We have kind of confronted this over the years, and it's one of those movies we could talk about for 15 minutes and just not describe anything that happens. And I don't know, this is not going to be a plot recap. Or you could talk about it for 15 hours because every single detail is so interesting and specific and thought out.
Right. As we were talking about before we started recording, like, essentially this is, and obviously this is not any sort of, astute observation that no one has ever made before that I'm doing here, but they're redoing Evil Dead 1 with a bigger budget.
Yes, that is definitely a component of it. It's essentially a remake. Possibly you might even call it a soft reboot of the first movie if you were to use modern terminology. They were kind of their hand was forced into this. Like, no one in the triumvirate of Raimi and Rob Tappert and Bruce Campbell thought they would have to make an Evil Dead 2. They had hired other writers to just come up with one because they kept being asked about it. And they said, like, you write it and you'll make it and we'll produce it. But certainly we won't be spending our time making Evil Dead 2 and then a little movie called Crime Wave.
This is where a sad trombone noise comes in.
Have you ever attempted to make your way through Crime Wave?
I don't think I have.
I don't know that there are advocates for it. And you're certainly seeing a type of Sam Raimi movie, but also it is so maligned. Like, the movie is essentially taken away from him at a certain point. And so he just kind of writes off most of that experience. And it's understandable because it's kind of heartbreaking what he wanted to do and what it ends up being. And so, they don't end up, this happens as a sense of like, we've got to get back on a horse and we've got to come up with something that we know we can get money to make. And so they shop Evil Dead 2 around town and everyone's like, rather not. This insanely profitable film, for whatever reason, they don't think will make a decent sequel, which I find crazy.
Well, I mean, like we doing this as long as we have, we've seen a lot of inexplicable decisions made with whether to make a horror movie or to not make a horror movie, or to how this horror movie should be made. Mm-hmm. Even though horror for the most part has been a known commodity in the filmmaking industry for a long time. It usually does pretty well, but every horror filmmaker has a story about going to a studio or producer with an idea, that ends up being like a classic horror movie, and somebody, on the business side, no, that's a bad deal right there. We're not going to do that.
We're not going to sully our reputations, our sterling reputation.
Have you considered making Friday the 13th Part 14?
We need a sequel to Joysticks. Do you have anything in the Joysticks arena? That's really more the kind of movie we're making around these parts.
Can we set it at Hamburger U?
We imagine something scholarly, like a ski school, as it were. if not a police academy. It just, you look around and obviously people have no shame, but horror seems to, up until recently, people have very little appetite for it. I think it's one of those things where you kind of have to be into it in order to understand what someone brings to you.
Right.
And that's kind of weirdly the background of this Evil Dead 2 story, is that the person who who allows this film to happen is the same person who pushed to the forefront the idea that you should see the original. And that is Uncle Steve. That's right. Stevie King.
Yep.
Comes through in a pinch. In the middle of a cocaine haze, he meets somebody who was on the production of Crime Wave going into Evil Dead 2 when they're starting to pitch it around, and they don't have any money. And so they're let go of their position and they find themselves working on Maximum Overdrive. And as Steve, in between rails, asks, what have you worked on? They say Crime Wave, and he's like, oh, from Raimi. He's like, yeah, they're trying to pitch Evil Dead 2, but no one wants to make it. And he picks up the phone and dials Dino De Laurentiis and says, you be crazy not to get into the Evil Dead 2 business. And they have one meeting with this guy for 15 minutes, and he's like, it done. And they've got $3.5 million to play with.
Yes, but also the script that Raimi originally wanted to do was what would later end up being Army of Darkness.
Yes.
Whereas De Laurentiis was like, make it the first one again.
They go to the cabin. They are in the woods. Again, my apologies to the nation of Italy. Your local pizza pie owner. Shop owner,
Italian plumbers,
people who work in sanitation, all of that. I apologize, as my infamous Dino De Laurentiis impersonation is not great. But that being said, you end up with, as we talked about earlier, kind of a remake of the original in theme, if not function, because here's the one little element of it that causes a lot of this kerfluffle. They can't legally use footage from the first Evil Dead because there's like 2 companies that own it, and none of them involve Sam Raimi, Rob Tappert, or Bruce Campbell.
Right.
They end up having to essentially make a soft remake of it, and they're like, do you want to have all the kids up there at the same time? That seems like a lot of extra cast. We'll end up having to tell their stories, and as well as really what we're focusing on, which is Ash for the first 40 minutes of the movie. And as a result, it kind of seems like if you were to walk into it thinking in the sequel that he's gone back to the same cabin. Right. Was that something you thought, or have you ever heard someone say that out loud?
I think certainly probably the first time I watched it, I'm like, oh, okay. But he brought back a different woman with him.
Right. And he's giving her the same necklace. That seems weird.
Yeah. There's some interesting aspects of what they keep from the first movie and what they get rid of. They keep the little, like, I guess it's a magnifying glass, like this odd little necklace that he gives his ladies. I just like to think Ash just has, like, a pile of them in a drawer in his house.
It's like that guy in The Blob who had that one treasure trove of class rings.
Right, exactly. That's just how he woos the ladies with this little old lady reading lens necklace. But also, what have we lost from the first one? Tree rape.
Yes. Again, when you boil it down to this very concise amount of time, and you're just retelling the very focused story of Ash and his girlfriend, it really does boil that first movie down to a very rich broth at which you can then start adding new elements to. And what I find so fascinating about the film's first 10 minutes when it's kind of going through that is the camera never stops moving. Like, it doesn't matter what's happening. It can be a guy reading into a tape recorder. It can be someone dancing around. It can be walking in the woods. The camera's spinning and jolting and flipping upside down. Like, when that transition from decapitating the girlfriend to the shovel used to dig her grave is, I love it.
Oh yeah, like, everything in this movie is, in comparison to the original, everything is amped up. You've got more blood. You've got the camera doing more stuff. You've got more slapsticky comedy. You've got Bruce Campbell just mugging like there's no tomorrow. Like I'm always charmed whenever I rewatch the first one by what a wooden actor he is in the first one. He's like a face and nothing else, like a handsome jawline and not much else. But here, like everything, like he was bad at a 4 in the original. Now he's bad at a 16. Like he is just mugging and moving the eyebrows and over emoting and just having such a grand time.
He's much a bigger presence, and that partially has to do with his role in the first one is just kind of be one of the crowd.
He's like the big handsome lug of the group.
Yeah, he's almost the emo member, because there's other people like, we got to do this, we got to do that, and he's like, hey, we should go back and get our injured, friend. Someone else goes like, fuck that. And so he's more emotive in that version. Whereas in this sort of remake-ette that happens in the first 10 minutes, since all those people are gone, you don't have to worry about that version of Ash. You just have to tell that emotionally true story of someone who turned on a tape recorder when they should not have, started leafing through a fucking book, and then whammo bammo, your girlfriend's got several rows of teeth and no eyes.
I mean, hoops among us.
And it's just, we talked quite a bit when we discussed Evil Dead about the charm of that film. It feels very handmade because it is. And while I totally agree with you that this movie is absolutely plussed up in every single capacity, it does not lose the handmade charm.
Oh, no,
it's just like they're trying to go for bigger charms, baby.
Exactly.
The quality of filmmaking here that Raimi, he doesn't really need to directly ape the previous movie. He just really uses it as an opportunity to re-envision the plot of the original and not make it about this college friendship, but a clash of people who don't know one another. And then, Ash has stumbled into this horrific set of circumstances, and we see him, like the best minds of my generation, with a dead girlfriend catapulted by a Ramo cam across the forest into a tree and face first into a puddle, possessed, starving, hysterical. And it just so happens that the Deadites have such shitty, time management. They only managed to get him by the time the sun comes up, and they're apparently like vampires, hint, that the sun makes them go nighty night.
Yeah.
Before we move on to any other portion of the movie, I guess I wanted to discuss something for a second. And that is, because this is not quite a reboot, not quite a sequel, not quite a remake, it's a bouillabaisse of all those things. And as of the recording of this episode, we've had the both release and subsequent bombing of The Strangers Chapter 1, with chapters 2 and 3 apparently in the can.
Which is always a good idea.
what the fuck are they going to do with that? If you're going to remake a movie, how much do you change and how much do you keep, in your opinion?
Now, recall the 2013 Evil Dead. That's a remake,
Sure.
correct, of the first
Yes.
one.
Well, I would say it is an alternate universe retelling.
Right, with no sense of humor.
Well,
well, no,
we'll get to it.
Okay. Well, as a preview, I do think it is the one character who constantly has shit happen to him.
Yes,
is supposed to be a little tongue in cheek and reminiscent of the slapstick humor of the original two.
Right. You just can't believe he's still alive.
It's just increasingly more horrifying the things that happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got, I mean, what is the secret sauce that makes all of these? Now, I realize Army of Darkness did not do that well, much to my chagrin.
Neither did this movie in its theatrical.
Not again, but it pretty quickly became a cult hit.
Yes.
So, but like, what is the secret sauce that made the 2013 and Evil Dead Rise do so well?
I mean, that's part of the reason why I wanted to do it this season, was after seeing Rise, like, what is the specific dial that Raimi and Tappert and Campbell kind of have on this? It seems almost egoless to a certain degree.
Yeah. This is truly. I mean, I hate using the word franchise, but this is a pretty flawless franchise. Like, even I couldn't even tell you which is the weakest one. I mean, probably the first one, only because it's just, it is so low budget,
and they can only do so much. Right. They are just hampered by a lack of money and time and resources. But that doesn't make it any less inventive.
No, it's very inventive.
How much they make out of it. Yeah.
Right. It's very inventive. It's very clever. It's, this one I think is so slapsticky that it's not actually scary. But that doesn't make it any less an entertaining movie. Whereas the 2013 and Rise, to me, was very scary. Because they were just so, they were very relentlessly bleak.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely get to it in full when we get to those movies. But I do feel like part of the pitch, at least for the 2013 version, was let's go back to that scenario with a different set of characters, not worry about having to replace Ash as a character, which I think is smart.
Right.
Because who are you going to get to do that? That's just
right, and I think that's the problem. Why a lot of these reboots ultimately fail, because they think that the audience is going to demand, and sometimes they do incorrectly, that you've got to bring back these legacy characters somehow or another. I would direct you to the absolutely execrable reboot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre last year, where the actress who played Sally Hardesty had already died. Marilyn Burns had been dead already, and they still felt the need to revive this character and then kill her off after about 10 minutes on screen. And it's like, I mean, it wouldn't have been any better. She wasn't there, but I mean, it was one of many issues I had with it, but it was just such a cheap ploy to draw in audiences, and ultimately just for such an empty movie.
I think that's part of the equation. No filmmaker goes into it thinking, I'm just going to make the cheapest knockoff and make the maximum amount of profit out of it, unless you're making an asylum movie. Everyone else, I think, goes into it with the idea of, I'm really trying to do something here. Now, I personally have not seen The Strangers Chapter 1. I have no desire to.
No, I don't like home invasion. I'm not a fan of home invasion.
I too am not a big fan of home invasion movies, and I would say part of the reason for that is the original Strangers, which scared the living fuck out of me. It is so precisely paced and so specific in the story it wants to tell, and it doesn't really waste a minute, despite the fact that much of it is just mood and atmosphere and waiting for things to happen. They just know the right calibration of it. And to just, by all reports, simply rehash the plot points of the original with two other actors, you gotta wonder fucking why.
Yeah, and I've heard from someone that these new ones are they're well, how did they become strangers? And it's like, I don't give a shit.
I don't care.
Like, I thought the whole point was that these were random acts.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to know why these people do this. I thought that was the whole point of why it made it scary, is they didn't have a reason.
It's why when anyone ever suggests how did Freddy Krueger become Freddy Krueger, it's like, well, he killed 20 plus children and they burned them up in a boiler room. That's how it happened. We were told there's no mystery here that you need to solve.
Right.
It doesn't make it better. It doesn't make it more interesting. Tell a good Nightmare on Elm Street story and stop worrying about explaining stuff.
Right.
I think the ultimate example, and a very worthy example in my mind, is Gus Van Sant's, science experiment of 1998 Psycho. I find it very helpful in this regard because his goal with that is, all right, I'm going to take this original script. I'm not really going to alter it. I'm going to take the compositions and plot setup of Hitchcock's original and truly attempt to make a nearly shot-for-shot remake, just to see what happens. And while opinions vary on that final product, and I cannot count myself as a great fan, my feeling has always been that it was like worth that effort because you finally get to see what an audience is willing to accept or reject when it comes to a remake. It's a very interesting and expensive science experiment, and I can't believe he used his blank check after an Oscar run of a movie to do that. He's just like, why don't I give this on? Now, I'm also going to add on-screen masturbation. That's something that we got to shove that in there,
wet
baby.
Noises.
Wet noises. What is going on in his pants is my question.
I mean, honestly, it sounds like he has a peanut butter and jelly sandwich just shoved down the front of his pants.
Can you imagine that's the only way you can masturbate? It's like, hold on, I got to go to the kitchen. Got to get 2 pieces of bread. Got to get peanut butter and jelly. Do I want to add honey? Not today. Today we're keeping the basics.
I'm not going to use crunchy because that's going to hurt.
Oh no! You're going for smooth, baby. I didn't want jam. I want jelly. All right. I don't want any sort of friction.
I'm not going to use marmalade. I'm not a sicko.
All right. Those are for those freaks out there. You know who you are.
Those marmalade fuckers.
A regular peanut butter and jelly sandwich to masturbate while I watch this lady take a shower. I'm just going to envision a tree.
Let me just hold a microphone at crotch level. There, this is ASMR for you.
Like, what the fuck is going on with his penis? You have to wonder. I also love that movie. Everyone is dressed like they came directly off the set of a Blur music video.
Oh, yeah.
Just so incomprehensibly costumed. And I don't quite understand it, but I didn't someone was going to remake Psycho. So if you're going to do it, why not make the ultimate cinematic what if and just remake it shot for shot just to see how an audience would react? And the thing that I often talked about when this happened, because I was working at Universal at the time, is that, Psycho is like about as far from an unknown quantity as you can get by 1998.
Right.
Despite the fact that I would say the vast majority of the audience had never seen the original Psycho. They're just aware of everything about Psycho.
Right.
They've heard because of Scream that the main character, or at least what the film projects as the main character, dies halfway through, and that that POV shifts now to someone who you may or may not be the murderer, but everyone knows it's Norman. Everyone knows that Norman's mother is dead and stuffed in the basement. These are things that people are walking into the theater knowing, but chances are 5 to 10% of them had actually sat down and seen Psycho at some point.
Well, yeah, I mean, the beauty is it's still effective, which once you realize that, the most iconic scene happens about like 20 minutes into the movie. Yeah. And then there is a lot of nothing for a while.
Yes. You're like, oh, I hope that poor boy whose mother is killing everybody, I hope he can really find help. He's trapped in a terrible situation.
She's a crazy lady. He better get out of there.
Why won't he just let her be?
He told her. She told him not to mess with them filthy girls.
Yeah, this is what happened. He's
got to stick to those peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Oh God.
Anyway, Evil Dead 2.
Weirdly enough, like The Strangers has been out now for quite some time, and I don't know how pervasive the knowledge of what happens in that original, or how many people have really seen The Strangers rather than heard about it, to think like this is a franchise that you absolutely can capitalize on.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, are we starting to, have we already gotten desperate? We're starting to dig into like the second tier franchises.
Well, I can't wait for somebody to tackle Brain Scan or Fear.com. Like,
I mean, D. Snyder's not doing anything. When's he going to bring back Strangeland 2?
He is an interesting cat, that one, because he had that one minor slip up where he's like, I hear that, trans people are doing this and that, and then got absolutely roasted on social media. And then a week later, it's like, you know what? I misspoke. This was wrong. I heard things and repeated them without investigating them further. And I was like, oh, that seems very mature and well thought out for a person who could just be an asshole about things. He managed to come out of that without going, I am now canceled and I need to become a right-wing asshole. He navigated that morass.
He's not showing up as a guest at Rudy Giuliani's celebrity cigar party or whatever.
Where you don't need a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The wetness comes from the hair dye leaking down. Because, up top's not the only place he's using it.
No. Thank you for putting the image of Rudy Giuliani dyeing his pubic hair in my head, Patrick.
Oh, he hired somebody. He doesn't do it himself. Come on.
Thank you.
He's America's mayor.
So much.
Okay. So we've gone on our
Anyway, Evil Dead Rise is really great. And
yes.
I'm looking forward to talking
Evil Dead
about
2013.
It. Yes. I was skeptical. I did not see that in the theater. And then I caught it on camera. I'm like, oh, God damn, I was dumb.
I had to see it twice in theaters in order to actually get it. Because the first time I saw it, I'm like, that's not my Evil Dead. Maybe there's something I'm not getting. And then I read some reviews and read what other people were thinking. I'm like, I need to give this another shot. And that's when I'm like, oh, I get it. They're not remaking the Evil Dead. They're transposing the idea of this into a different format. Their Deadites aren't meant for my entertainment. They are just crazy demons let loose inside of human bodies, for the first time in a long time, and are like, what can this shit do? Maybe I just start slicing stuff off.
Right, exactly.
And that's where I think we get to my next point concerning the Evil Dead as a franchise, and more specifically here. There's a word that is used to describe the original Evil Dead that they use in marketing. And it's even used here in the end credits when it says The Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn, the sequel to the most grueling experience in horror. And that's grueling. What unifies all of these things is grueling. And like any good high school level class presenter, I'm going to do the definition for you, Gina. Grueling is an adjective. It's characterized by effort to the point of exhaustion, especially physical effort. It's arduous. It's backbreaking. It's hard, laborious. It's punishing. These are all words you can describe Evil Dead movies with. And that, I think, is the core at the center of these films.
I was going to say, oh, there's all words to describe what the experience must have been like for Ted Raimi to wear that costume.
Exactly. I just think grueling is that unifying, that line that goes through each and every version of this. And that includes, like, when it comes to this movie, obviously it has a much more comedic bent. And the comedy and the camera moves and the invention and how they use all their tricks and trades here to bring this story to life. What they are grueling. They are arduous. They don't stop. You're exhausted by the end of this. And you're not exhausted in I've been scared so much way with Evil Dead 2, but it's more like I've been laughing and I'm confused and I don't know what's real and what's fake. And I feel light in the head and I need to lie down for a while.
Right.
There's a sketch comedy quality to it. It's very segment heavy. And to a degree, I would feel like this is the way Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars are built on the backs of Saturday movie serials. This has a lot of short reel silent movie built into it.
Oh, like, yeah. You've got that one scene that where they're all reacting to different noises. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's all very choreographed. They're all moving the exact same way, like shoot, 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 shoot.
Yeah.
It's like the scene in Janet, Brad, Dr. Scott, Rocky scene in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
It's both ridiculous, and you would think at the end of this, anyone who would survive would just be mentally destroyed.
Right.
You know, Ash so much has talked about the physical torture of Bruce Campbell, the actor, but a lot of this movie he spent like mourning the love of his life and being possessed by a demon and only being driven away by happenstance. And like all this shit happens over and over and over again. And his resilience has less to do with him being a classic movie hero and more someone just trying to stay alive and the house trying to drive him insane.
Right. You've got that great freak out scene right before the other characters who most of them, with the exception of Annie, don't really help much at all. Right, yeah. They just kind of get in the way. But you've got the Moosehead taunting him, which I love. It's very, very, very Looney Tunes.
Yeah, there's a lamp that cackles at him at one point. And there would be these moments where he's just on the floor, on his knees, looking around, bug-eyed, going, what the fuck is happening? Like, this has to stop, right? This can't just go on. And there's some part of this that just feels like Sam Raimi is doing this to everybody in the cast. They're all forced to endure this mental baton death march through the plot of this film and try to survive. And some people, cackle in madness, and other people just start to screech when they're dragged across the floor. There's a term that Guillermo del Toro used in reference to Evil Dead 2 when asked about it. He called it sophisticated juvenilia. Keep in mind, English is his second language. But I think it's very apt.
Oh, yeah.
To me,
I love it.
Raimi and Tappert and Campbell, they do have like a mini trial run of The Book of the Dead or Cabin in the Woods, whatever they called that first short film that you can't even see, but was their dry run for the 81 film. And then here, this is more like, all right, we've got the time and money to actually stretch our legs. What if given the opportunity to do something, let's really do something. And this is the result. It's joyous and stupid all at the same time. I think because Crime Wave was such a fucking disaster, they're like, if we're going to do this again, we have to find a way to make this worth our time and effort. We really got to show people that we can make a fucking movie. And then they're like, also, I'd like to do way more Three Stooges stuff.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So listen, I know I keep using the word slapstick, but like he just gets knocked around, he runs into shit, he falls downstairs, and it's all very, I mean, some of it is sped up occasionally, like when Henrietta, the Deadite in the basement in her fruit cellar, like is going after him and like pulling him down to the stairs, like that is definitely sped up. Yeah. And it's, you know, and it's meant to be kind of weird and disoriented, but it's also really funny too.
It's just so outlandish that there's you just don't know how to take any of it.
Right. I mean, like the scene where his hand is attacking him and it's just him like holding his wrist and moving his hand around. Like I'm literally doing it right now. But like then they loop in the hand making
where this is a legit fucking question I have for you, Gina. What part of that hand is making that noise?
I don't know. It's grown a little mouth that can bite people.
It's got one of those Leviathan palm mouths
now. And he's just freaking out over this. And it's like, how are you able to do this and keep a straight face?
The incredible amount of physical dexterity one has to have to make the hand, while still attached to his body, into a separate character, and the rest of you react as if you don't know what your hand's doing, is fucking brilliant. And I would honestly put it, now I'm not the greatest silent film, historian that you've ever seen, but I've had Turner Classic Movies for a while. I've seen some Chaplins. I've seen a bunch of stuff. There is something to his level of commitment and skill in that sequence that puts him on that scale, in that conversation. That's just not something a lot of people are able to do. And he can, and he should be praised for it. I don't think he should walk away from it. I think there's part of, he's so Midwestern that he just projects the world's greatest movie star persona a lot. When told how people feel about this particular portrayal, there's a lot of him that kind of like, it's just, hey, I wasn't an actor. I was just a guy helping a friend. I'm like, well, you were for that first movie, but this is on another fucking level.
No, I couldn't imagine the movie without him.
I don't think you have an Evil Dead 2 without Bruce Campbell. Nor can you, I believe that you could have Bruce Campbell in this and someone else directing it, and it would have been what we now have.
Right.
I think you need that triumvirate, that three-headed hydra behind the lens and in front of it in order to actually create these first three movies. They just don't exist without those people talking to one another and rejecting one idea and moving towards another. You really have to come up with something crazy and be able to have faith that Sam's going to be able to pull that off. That's that sequence, which the camera comes up over the lip of the bridge and just follows the classic all the way to the cabin. And then he starts running through the fucking cabin. That's nuts. If you put that down on paper, no one would believe you could actually pull that off.
Yeah, you could definitely see that one of the main reasons it makes it such a charming and even oddly inspiring movie is you could see that the people involved in the making of this movie really trusted each other.
Because, like, I'm going to chase after you with a camera on a 30-foot pole. That's you really need to trust somebody in order to make that happen. I'm going to strap you to this wooden cross, and in kind of a weird fast motion sped up camera, I'm just going to whack you with a bunch of branches while I spin you around. You need to trust that person.
Right.
Even more so than the first movie, I'm amazed how many different parts of this weird fucking cabin people can run through at any given moment.
It either has like 3 rooms or 30 rooms.
Right.
It's like we might have made this comparison in the first one, but it's like the TARDIS.
Yes, it's bigger on the inside for sure. because you look at it from the outside with like 2 windows and a door. You're like, that's like a tiny, New York City apartment in there. And then people just keep running. They find new spaces to run around inside there. So as this is supposedly a character focused horror movie podcast, I guess we need to talk about people in the order in which they die. So first up is Ash's barely named girlfriend.
It's Linda. Her name is still Linda.
It's Linda again, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was one aspect of the original movie that they held on to, albeit, she's around for a lot shorter time than the Linda in the first movie is.
Yes. And in here they make the character a little bit stronger of a presence, though, someone you can idealize, so that when she's gone so quickly, you can understand why he's so tormented by it. But also she gets to become a dancing skeleton, and that's very cool.
I love that. It looks shitty as all get out, but I love it anyway.
Again, you don't come to Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn for stark realism.
If you see an Evil Dead with good special effects, you see the 2013 or the new one.
But there is something delightfully insane of her diving out of the grave, using her arm, and like she uses her head like a top hat and then puts it back on top of her neck. And then she does this whee off into the moon. And every time I see it, I'm like, that's the fucking greatest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you have to be demented to think that people are just going to sit still for this. Also, how sharp is that fucking shovel that he's using?
He's just like, whoop. That's just, he doesn't even like swing that hard. He just sort of like swings at her. Her head comes her up like slicing an apple.
I think Deadites, it's a little looser up there.
Yeah, I feel like they're just kind of like, a big pile of, decaying rags after a certain point.
Right. Especially like Henrietta.
Oh, God.
Like a walking mass of like bacon fat, I think.
Oh, God.
At a certain point.
Yeah, I don't know how when they throw him into that fruit cellar, I don't know how he just doesn't I don't know how his nose doesn't tell him that there's something else down there.
Well, she is buried a little bit. She's at least underneath the dirt, to the point where they forced Raimi, with those crazy contacts that you can't see through, to burst through the dirt and just screech like his feet are on fire. That's the other thing. Like, Ted Raimi is taking it on the chin playing this character, and literally, do you cast a guy to play a woman that's inherently grotesque? I get you. I feel that. But also, no one should have to put up with playing that fucking character.
No.
And the only reason Ted Raimi is because his older brother is like, yeah, he'll do it. He's a big tum-tum.
Of course.
He'll do anything.
Oh, come on. You wouldn't have loved the opportunity to play a grotesque monster in a low-budget horror movie?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's more fun than being the hero, honestly.
Yeah, no, he gets to completely disappear. The film is not on his shoulders, no matter how broad, sloping, or full of loose meat.
Exactly.
I find it all just so charming. And for me, because I don't know about you, like, I've seen the movie so many times, I could probably fall asleep to it, not because it's boring, because it's oddly calm.
It's a definite comfort food watch for me.
I'm not sure when the first time I'm going to show it to Ollie is. I don't know because it's so ludicrous. I don't know that he'll legitimately be scared by it, but there is imagery in it that is, stuck in my brain.
It's despite its very cheap special effects, there's some fairly gross moments. But again, because it's so joyfully silly, I don't find it particularly scary. Right.
Like the jump scare of when Ash is looking out the boarded window and she kind of pops into frame. Like that's a good little, jump scare. But then when she rams his head into those boards 10 times,
and he's like going cross-eyed.
And then he just wakes up in a chair and screams for a full minute. There's a lot going on in this film where he's just like trying to like, all right, don't go insane yet. There's no reason to go insane. And then his decapitated girlfriend bites and possesses his hand. It's a lot to fucking take.
And then his hand somehow develops a little, a
cartoon mouse noise.
Yeah.
How they devise all of these gags takes a lot of forethought. You know, when that head is attached to his hand, they made it so that like he can't really get that head off. Because if he does, the gag's over. The whole shot's done. So they devise this thing so that, he can't really take it off. When he cuts off his own hand and replaces it with a chainsaw, there's this whole, metal arm that goes up to make his fist appear to be the nub of his wrist and make so that it doesn't move no matter what he does. Like all these things are really thought out and ahead of time. There's no happenstance. And I think that's why this forever outlives, to a certain degree, the first one, in that it's all the things that the first one wanted to be, but just couldn't quite get to. This gets to that point.
Right. I mean, but it's also, while it's a superior movie, it doesn't make the first one not worth watching.
Exactly. Yes. Because it has its own charms. It has its own intensity. It has its own feeling that this movie is not trying to recapture so much as refract it through a different lens.
Right.
So let's see. Who goes next?
Bobby Joe.
Bobby Joe. Of course, I think the most famous thing about this particular role is that it was written for Holly Hunter.
Is that, I believe that, because I do feel that the actress they got for her is woefully miscast.
Yes. It was described in the script as a Southern Wildcat. And they originally were going to cast the woman who plays Annie. And she insisted on reading Annie after they're like, you can play Bobby Joe. And she's like, I would like to read for Annie. I find that role more interesting. And so Bobby, the lady who plays Bobby Joe, Cassie Wesley, is kind of like the B team to a certain degree. I think it's hard to play that with a level of reality.
Right. I mean, she's not bad, but I think she like, if you're asking me for like a kind of, badass hillbilly chick, it's not really her.
Yes. There's an inherent softness to her that is, I don't want. I want someone to be as hardcore as Jake is hardcore. I want someone to be as hardcore as Annie is in her sort of intellectual, I need to think this through way. And yeah, but she's also not around so long that you're like, well, she's dragging down this movie.
Right.
It would have been very interesting to have Holly Hunter in this role. But if Holly Hunter's in this movie, she's not doing broadcast news. And I think she made the right choice.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. She goes off into the woods and she dies by tree bashing is what we
they have a variation on the tree scene from the first one, but it's not as explicitly a rape. Like instead of showing the tree vines and branches going up her leg, and like I think some go into her mouth, which is that is evocative.
Oh, the movies likes to shove things in her mouth. That is absolutely what this movie is.
But not quite as overtly so as the first one.
It is not as mean-spirited, I think.
Right.
And also, this movie has no time for what feels like the first film is really the undercurrent of that, where it's kind of like nature's out to get you. You fucked around long enough. Now you're in a place where you don't have any modern help, and the trees are going to take you back.
What I think, right. What I think is interesting is, and I know we keep talking about we're gonna get to these later, is how the 2013 one kind of went back to that, but made it less a sexual assault and more almost like a kind of, tying up the virgin sacrifice for the monster that's coming, which I think is a really cool variation on that.
A one of us moment.
Right.
And yeah, I think the tree stuff, it's goofier, but everything's kind of goofier. It doesn't make it bad.
Yeah, it's very silly, but in an absolutely entertaining way.
Like the mirror sequence with Ash, where everyone shows up, where he, they've built a replica of the other side of the set, of the back of the set, through the mirror, and he reaches through. Like, that works so fucking well.
It does.
You just can't. I think if you don't hit the marks you're going for, this is just silliness without any merit to it. But the fact that they're able to go for those levels and then hit them, that is what takes this beyond a curio and makes it an absolute classic, which should be talked about in, revered hushed tones in between laughter.
Right.
Because it's just as good a comedy. It's even better a comedy than it is a horror movie. But I don't think you'd have the comedy without the horror movie.
No, it's like a, hold your breath, release. Hold your breath, release.
There's so much of the film that is just told through the camera lens rather than dialogue. The way the camera will twist around from, now it's kind of hackneyed. We've seen it so many times now. The whole, I'm going to run around with this camera upside down and then it slowly turns. I think we've seen enough of that. It was great for the first 5 to 6 years. People repeated it.
Right.
But now I think it could be done away with. But I never think about that when I see it in Evil Dead 2. Mm-hmm. I just think it looks fucking cool.
It does.
Whether that's they do that with the title treatment or going out through a boarded window and shifting sides, or the way the camera spins when someone lands in a puddle or wakes up from a dream. All these bigger than life camera movements all have a purpose, are all trying to tell a story. And Raimi is one of those guys and those directors that I love that tells you where to look. That's important, especially in a horror movie or an action film. You need a director to tell you, this is what's important to look at. Now, I'm going to spin around it. I'm going to force you to look at these things a specific way. And I want you to see them. And I think with the Netflix of it all, unfortunately, that's been sort of beaten out of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
I don't want to get off my lawn about it. I think there's practicalities to it and forces that it's not like anti-individuality. It's that like, well, this has to work on a phone. And that just should never be your immediate concern when making a movie.
No.
You make TV for that. I don't come to Columbo for great camera work, right? Things just exist in a frame and that's fine. That's great. Because what the fireworks I'm coming for are seeing a person commit a murder, think they're going to get away with it. And this guy in a rumpled coat shows up and is like, I've got some questions for you. And then 79 minutes later, it's over.
And he's wanting to know why this guy's turned into a pile of oatmeal. We don't got no oatmeal in this one.
We don't have oatmeal people.
There's no oatmeal people. I am disappointed to say. There's a lot of random body parts thrown around.
It's more punishment and there's more geysers of blood.
Yes.
There are no geysers of oatmeal. I think the only real oatmeal moment is when that big tree head shows up at the end.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
He gets sawed into the eyeball and there's some oatmeal, but that can almost just be tree sap. You don't really know, but that's really the most oatmeal-y moment.
Right.
When Ash, the hand, pulls Ash's body by its fingernails across the floor.
And you see the hand's point of view.
Yes.
That never ceases to crack me up.
It's so good.
Like, how's the hand seeing? What is the hand seeing with?
It's an aura. It's supernatural. It's not. We're not in reality times. I guess the ghost sees, the demon sees. Why, if it's already in the hand, doesn't travel up the rest of the arm? Who's to say? At this point, they've got one body to fuck around with, so they're not in a rush to possess Ash. They're playing around with him. And that's where the link to where my, as I thought about it more and more, how 2013 directly relates to Evil Dead 2. Like, oh, these aren't my Deadites. No, they are really happy to fuck around with you. They find joy in it. They love to horrify. This is part of the fun for them, is making you freak the fuck out.
Oh yeah, they are absolutely enjoying watching his brain snap.
This is one of those things where I don't think the Deadites have a master plan, right?
Right.
That sort of comes up in the next film that we'll cover, Army of Darkness, where suddenly they're like, I don't know, why don't we take this shit over? We're immortal. We might as well do something grandiose here. Whereas I never get the feeling in this movie that the Deadites have a bigger scenario in the back of their minds.
No, it's like they don't even know that they can't be out in daylight. Like when Ash turns into a demon, a Deadite the first time, he's surprised that he can't be out in daylight.
Well, he's only had one night of exposure to them, so. The concepts that this just wouldn't be going on and on and on and on. I just don't think Deadites are big on learning lessons.
No,
they're not taking
like notes. each day, when we say each day is a brand new day for them, like it's literally that's like just the first day every day for them.
Just goofy baby birds possessing the next person they come across. Jake. Jake is our hillbilly character. When he yells Bobby Joe 14 times in a row, part of me dies.
Papa Joe!
Papa Joe! I mean, it is weirdly heartfelt. I don't feel a lot of false notes when he yells Bobby Joe, but also I would like him to stop. I'm sorry. I would like him to stop. Again, grueling. The major note here is grueling. My big question to you, though, about Jake, the moment I find hard to square the circle, as it were, is what causes Jake to put hazard cones around the busted bridge and just wait there for somebody to show up?
Yeah, it's like, were they like intending to do people harm?
Were they, or is he like, I just want to see if someone, drives real fast and goes over that ravine. I'll even put cones out. I don't know.
Or they're banking on someone needing an escort to a cabin that they could rip them off of a couple $100.
Yeah, like are times that tough is the question. But also, I do love when they end up hiking out to the cabin that Jake is saddled with that giant chest, and Annie's boyfriend is like, I don't fucking carry shit. You carry that. That's for you.
Yes, Annie's boyfriend, whose name eludes me.
It is Ed. Hence, I think the start of the evil Ed trope. Although that might also be in Fright Night. I'm not sure.
No, Fright Night would have been first, because that was 85.
So it's a continuation of the evil Ed trope. This is evil Ed Dose.
You may be thinking who? And that's okay, because he's completely forgettable.
I tried to come up with a interesting take on him, and I think that he's just one of the most useless characters in this franchise.
He's sort of the Ash of this, the first movie's Ash of this one. Like, right, just yes. Like a big, good-looking lug.
And when he goes Deadite, the makeup effects on him are so crazy. They're burned into your brain. And I would hazard a guess that when people think of a Deadite, they're often thinking about Ed.
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Because Henrietta is so unique. You don't really know much of Henrietta. You see like a photograph of her and her finding the Book of the Dead in that castle. You're like, why is she there? Why is Ed there?
Exactly.
He doesn't complain that much. He's really trying to cycle through what the hell's going on here. And by the time he even gets close to figuring it out, he's possessed and launched into the ceiling, and he's all neck jerks and finger waggles.
He's got like 3 sets of teeth.
You know, I don't think we've mentioned them yet. You have Greg Nicotero and the K&B crew and Mark Shostrom, who was the lead makeup person on this. And they come up with this concept of multiple rows of teeth like a shark. So you'd have fake teeth, real teeth, and put a little thing behind the teeth for extra small teeth. You have 4 levels of teeth.
That's a lot of teeth.
And he complained at the time, I can't close my mouth. And they're like, it'll be fine. It's going to be small shots constantly. You're just going to be waggling at the camera. You won't need to close your mouth. And then when Raimi came in and saw him drooling, saying, I can't close my mouth, he's like, perfect. Never seen anything better.
I was going to say, why would you
flying out of a mouth?
Why would you want to close your mouth and roll on those teeth? If I had those appliances, I'd be like, look, isn't it cool? I mean, they don't have to talk.
No, you really do not have to talk. And all that's going to be ADR'd anyways. They're not capturing your live sound and putting on the soundtrack. That ain't happening. But he's great. Like, he goes from useless and nothing character to an incredibly evocative demon man.
Right.
And he just gets shotgunned. Is that what happens?
Pretty much.
And then we have Annie, or we have Henrietta in terms of dying.
Right.
Henrietta, played by Ted Raimi. I think we've covered a lot of it. It is what I think interesting about Henrietta as a character is that there's an engaging menace to her almost immediately. Like, it is a living cartoon.
Right. And she's doing the whole like taunting them from the cellar, which is, has become like a sort of running thing in all of the movies, where I think like in the newest one, I think it's comparable to when she's trying to...
Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify is there to help you grow. Shopify helps you sell everywhere, from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system. Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms, and sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. What I love about Shopify is how no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., and Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
To coerce the kid into opening the door. Like, it's kind of the same thing, sort of like, trying to trick them and then, taunting them and threatening them. And, all of them have a scene that harkens back to that original scene, the first one.
Even though it's kind of a play on what happens in the first film, the swallow your soul moment is just burned into my brain.
It's just so effective.
And the fact that she can turn into an ostrich head
is
also underrated.
And make monkey noises, which is weird.
Yeah. The sound library in the Evil Dead 2 offices must have been very, very
there's somebody gleefully just mixing stuff together on that editing board.
He said, what have you got in the way of a Tarzan? Someone has it.
It's like, well, we need to make a sound that, this creature is evolving into something else. Well, have you considered chimpanzee noises? Yeah, that sounds great. Sure.
And she kind of survives for a while doing heinous things and making bad noises, and then it being a constant, you think, contained threat until someone decides to throw the extra pages of the Book of the Dead into the basement. And then turns out you need those.
Yeah. I mean,
I also love that we didn't really talk about how Jake is dispatched, which is he's stabbed, and then Annie drags him, yelling at him in his ears to shut the fuck up, over to that basement. And then Henrietta grabs him by the head, drags him into the basement while his legs are still sticking out. And then he just gets fucking blood geyser.
I was going to say that's too much blood for one person.
Yeah. You have to wonder, like, can Jake's body contain that much blood? But again, also the walls have that much blood. So how much of it is coming from Jake and how much is just contained in the cabin at all?
Yeah. You could juice this house like an orange.
Oh, the Bloody Marys you could make with this house. It's kind of spectacular. And they don't really worry about making sure that someone appears to be covered with blood, even though they've been geysered.
Yeah, like she takes that geyser, Annie takes that geyser full in the face. And the next shot, she's got some blood on her shirt. Maybe.
She's got some droplets.
It's like she was trying to make a strawberry daiquiri and forgot to put the lid on the blender.
But then again, like, if you're going to cinema sense this fucking thing, you're already watching it the wrong fucking way.
Exactly.
There's just, you don't come to if continuity is something you hold dear to your heart, this isn't the movie.
No.
If you want to see dudes fly and fingers become extra, extra long and they got too many teeth, this is the movie.
Exactly.
I do love that, even though he's got kind of a mullet, when he becomes evil, Ed's mullet becomes even more exaggerated. They cannot keep a wig normal in this movie.
No, it's like they had to buy the wigs. So if they like rented the wigs from a costume shop, they're like, yeah, you're not getting these back.
When Ed eats a whole thing of hair is another good one. He just swallows Bobby's hair. I can't believe that this movie got an X. Can you believe that it got an X?
Yeah, and it was deemed a video nasty for a while, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
It's like I said, there are a couple gross moments, but also they look so silly that like it's hard to imagine anybody being repelled by it.
It's definitely not a gross out movie in the way the first film is, or 2013 is, or Rises is. Those films are definitely enveloping what has become acceptable. And I think there was just too outrageous for its time. And it ultimately ends up hurting it at the box office. Like, this cost $3.5 million to make, and it barely eked to just under $6 million. And part of it was you couldn't advertise it in newspapers because it was unrated. And they only released it into 310 theaters. So it's a fucking miracle legs it out to 6 mil. Like, but I tried desperately for a full hour. It's like someone in the world has to have estimated how much this movie has made in home video over the years.
It's always been like a big on the midnight movie circuit. It's always, right. It's one of those movies that's always being screened in a movie theater somewhere.
And a movie that lived in so many VHS editions and so many DVD editions and so many Blu-ray editions. And I'm like, I am not going to buy this in 4K. I'm not going to buy this in 4K. Gina, what did I do?
You bought it in 4K.
You're damn right. I have to have possessed this in 3, 4, 15 formats. If they come out with a mind implant, I'm probably going to make it. Like, I'll probably want that in my mind.
Yeah, this is a movie in which someone who I would consider at least as much of a horror fan as me, claimed that they did not like it, and I'm like, I just don't understand you. And then I realized, and then later they also did not like Drag Me to Hell, and I'm like, oh, you just don't like Sam Raimi movies. Okay,
you don't like the maximalist.
I still don't understand you.
Yeah. Again, not every movie should be for everybody. In fact, the best movies are made for a select few. That being said, if the way someone does something you just can't see merit in, I have filmmakers that are like that I just cannot get past what they're putting out. And so, other people might like them. I'm like, I'm glad somebody does, but not being able to handle Sam Raimi is a new one for me.
Well, there's just now, that Wizard of Oz movie he made aside, which I actually found atrocious. And I think it was like, came out, he was the wrong director for the material.
Yes.
There's just such a joyfulness to his filmmaking that I don't see how you can't appreciate it, even if you don't actually like the finished product.
Yes. Because he's trying to make a movie.
Right. He's having a good time.
Yeah.
People complained about how, this gal in Drag Me to Hell. I don't know if we're going to get to, I'm sure we will at some point.
Sure.
He just putting her through the ringer, and it's like, yeah, but he's having a good time putting her through the ringer. I'm sorry. When that old bag just hauled up and vomited right in her face, I'm just like cracked up.
And that seance sequence is a thing of beauty. It just, you love to see Raimi uncorked. And it's not like he couldn't translate that to other mediums. Obviously, there is the Dr. Octopus, surgical suite sequence.
Yeah, which is great and horrifying.
That feels like at the end of it, he should probably have arms and look at the camera and say groovy. It just feels like that's the only thing missing from it. The seance sequence and that, how he's also makes, a simple plan grueling to a certain degree, because the tension in that movie, and you see people make wrong decision after wrong decision after wrong decision. He just knows how to crank up the concepts and the plot elements in that movie to make people suffer for bad decisions. And you're like, this guy knows how to fucking do it. And yeah, I just think he found, like, not everyone bats 1,000. That Oz movie is atrocious on an incredible level. But I also have to wonder how much of it he was in control with. Like, it's a bad script. It's not like it's good from idea.
Yeah, it's not a good, it's nobody's best moment. What was it? Anne Hathaway? No, I'm confusing it with the other shitty one, Alice in Wonderland.
Right.
Who was it? Rachel Weisz and what's her face from that 70s show? Mila Kunis. Yeah, it's nobody's best moment.
No one comes out of that looking good. It just seems like a bad idea.
I just feel like Sam Raimi is better than directing a script in which the female villain's motivation is a broken heart.
Whereas, and I'm one of those defenders of that second Doctor Strange movie. When people start having fights with music, and Doctor Strange, a different universe's Doctor Strange comes back from the dead and has a cape full of ghouls, you're like, that's Sam Raimi, everybody.
Right. And
that's why they hired the guy.
And with Drag Me to Hell, yeah, I mean, the gal was just, she was a victim of her own ambition and did not feel good. But, I understood that old lady's motivation.
Yeah.
It's like, you're going to make me homeless for your promotion.
Right.
It's like, I'd vomit bugs in someone's face too. Who wouldn't?
Well, first of all, it's loading all the bugs in.
Well, I really don't like bugs. So I don't want to have to put them in my mouth or swallow them down a little bit. But like projectile vomiting anything in anybody's face is a pretty effective way of getting your point across, I must say.
The only character we haven't really delved into to any great degree is Annie, and she
screams. She screams a lot.
She screams a lot. She was hired for that scream. Like, that scream solidified the role. It's very memorable, and you can hear it really, really well.
Yeah, it's not quite Jamie Lee and Prom Night shrill, but it's a you have a little PTSD there.
Yeah,
have that Vietnam flashback of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Are we the two people on the face of the planet who love Jamie Lee Curtis but don't think she's a good screamer?
I don't think she's bad in Halloween, but she does get to a glass breaking level, right after that point. And Annie's close, but not quite.
And luckily she gets the air knocked out of her lungs in Halloween too, so you don't have to hear it that many times. She's in a sleepy time coma and getting flirted with by a grosso ambulance driver.
Exactly.
What she says about the role and why she wanted it is interesting. It sort of, you don't find it a whole bunch and mainly in the slasher movies we cover, but I think in like haunted house movies, not necessarily that uncommon, which is Annie in her mind is a professional. She's just not some girl. She's like a professional archaeologist whose father was an archaeologist. She's following the family tradition. And she is also malleable enough in how she confronts the situation. Obviously she sees a bloody, axe and chainsaw on the floor and she can't find her parents. And she's like, that guy is probably why my parents are dead. But when she figures out that her mom is possessed by a crazy grosso demon, she's like, get that guy out of the basement. She doesn't wait. She is flexible enough to roll with the information she has in front of her and go, well, okay, he was telling the truth. He doesn't have to die for my mistake.
Yeah, I'm glad that it does not waste too much time with him having to convince them that he's telling the truth. That all it takes is one encounter with Henrietta.
And they're like, oh, I get it. Okay.
Yeah, he may be crazy, but he's not that crazy.
Whereas like Jake is entirely inflexible. He doesn't want any of this to continue. He's more than willing to shotgun anyone in the house to get out. He's like, we got to go get Bobby Joe. And they're like, she's a ghoul. She's out in the forest of ghouls. There's no coming back from that, man.
Yeah, no.
He does not want to hear it. I don't think we can talk about this movie without discussing Groovy. That is the thing that so outlives, like, is the pinnacle of this movie in a certain degree.
It's certainly the most iconic moment, I think.
It's such a histrionic, culminant, joyous sequence of putting the thing together and you're not really sure what it is. And then it just ending on Groovy, which it wasn't in the script. They landed on it on the day because they want to remind the audience that Ash is not cool.
Well, it didn't work.
It's just one of those things where you can't anticipate what an audience's reaction is. But I think that is, the Avengers coming through portals level of hair raising for me, that sequence.
Yes.
It just evokes all the feels all at the same time. So yeah, I don't know when I'm going to show Ollie this. And I wonder what his reaction is going to be. Maybe we do a Ollie's first watch after I convince him to watch it.
That could be fun.
Yeah. Anything else we absolutely need to discuss about Evil Dead 2 that we haven't already?
I mean, listen, if you, and I really try to be like this, I'm not a gatekeeper, but if you consider yourself any kind of horror fan, you really should have seen this by now.
There's a lot of movies in the world, and what would be the point of this podcast if not to celebrate what we love, but also be the choir that preaches it?
Exactly.
And sings the praises of it to the uninitiated.
I mean, yes, the special effects haven't aged well, but they weren't very good 1987 standards either, and that was part of the charm. Like
Yes.
they're still used. I mean, there is so much stop motion in this, which as I've mentioned numerous times, I love anything having to do with stop motion. That just automatically delights me.
It's the same with me in matte paintings. When I see a matte painting, it's part of me melts. I just regress.
Yeah.
Into a happy child.
Right. You've got stop motion. You've got kind of claymation in certain scenes. But yeah, again, by 1987, we had 3 Star Wars movies, 2 Raiders of the Lost Ark movie, and E.T. So and Ghostbusters. So we'd had a pretty high standard of special effects by that point. So yeah, even by 87 standards, this was not high tech. So don't go into it thinking, oh, I'm going to see this corny movie from the 80s and the special effects are going to suck. They suck then.
I would say they're charming.
They are charming, but I mean, it looks like a slightly higher budget version of a movie that was made for $17, which is essentially that's what it is.
This movie absolutely has tree branches that are being shaken by grips. Like that is what is happening here. But what this film does well and what it's trying to do in such an unrelenting manner is just throw ideas and concept and visuals and movement at you at such a high velocity that you just have to sit back and allow it to happen. You just have to go for the ride.
Yeah.
Okay. We can't really wrap things up unless we choose our own deathventure. And that's where we decide of the deaths portrayed in this motion picture. If you were forced to die in one of those ways, which one would it be and why? We have up for bid, like possessed by a Kandarian demon a couple of times, a bunch of times. But that's often not the exact reason why somebody dies. You got decapitated by a shovel, buried, dance around, parts separated, reburied, hacked up with an axe, smashed by the trees into more trees, stabbed, then get blood geysered by Henrietta. You didn't think you had that much blood in your body, but apparently,
like, what do you think she did to him? Like, did she like just squeak? She's like popping like a grape or something.
I think her head becomes some sort of mangler like buzzsaw that just chews through people like that cotton machine in that Stephen King rat movie.
Yes. You always forget the name of it. It's Graveyard Shift.
Graveyard Shift. Or you can get shot in the head with a shotgun or stabbed in the back by a possessed severed hand wielding Kandarian dagger. Or you can get transported to, a different time and place, which isn't really death, but you're not really sticking.
He don't look too happy about it.
He does not look thrilled. He went through a time portal, and that takes a lot out of a guy.
It does.
When you start to hear a lonely violin while you circle through time, it's never a good sign. He gets jaunted during this.
He does.
Anyways, all right, what say you, Gina?
I'm gonna take stabbed in the back by a disembodied hand with holding a Kandarian dagger, because at least I get to be the hero. I get to save the day.
You're going out on top,
right?
You're gonna have to wear those shorts then.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to spend the last few hours of my life like shrieking at a level that could burst a dog's head, but I think I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna go with decapitated by shovel.
Okay. And you get to dance around with one titty hanging out.
Listen, that's how I dance usually. I've encouraged my son, I enjoyed dancing as a youth. And I tell all young people, not that they listen to this show, that you should dance while you have the opportunity to dance. Dancing is so much fucking fun. It is so exhilarating.
It is.
It is the fucking best. And at a certain point, your body doesn't want to do it for long periods of time anymore. And it sucks. I really enjoy dancing. So if I get to dance past that, or I get to roll my head down my arm and you just go wee off into the moonlight.
Yeah, give me old razzle dazzle. Yeah, with your rotting corpse.
Yes, I'm finally at my goal weight.
What was that? I think it was a Pearl Jam song where Todd McFarlane, where it's got the stripper that like peels off her entire like skin, and she's just a skeleton like in a little G-string.
Uh-huh. Oh, that sounds like a Todd McFarlane thing.
Yes,
yes I believe this. I get it. With his weirdo Jersey accent. I own the first comic book he ever drew professionally. His Spitfire New Universe from Marvel comic. I collected all the New Universe comics. That's how fucking geeky I am.
And that's why we're here today.
That's right. And speaking of being here today, I'd be remiss if I don't tell everyone you should check out our Patreon for extra bonus episodes like film commentaries and Q&A sessions. And we try to do it all for you there 3 times a month. I think it's worth your $1. And then, rate and review us on your podcatcher of choice. We haven't really had a new review in a while. And it really does help boost us up in the charts. It doesn't matter where in the world you do it. We would enjoy your talk back. And if I see it and you tell us what your favorite movie death is in a movie we've covered, we'll talk about it here on the air. That's our kill by kill promise to you, our listener. Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I write about movies and television at thespool.net. I have a Substack, GinaWatchesThings.substack.com. And I am on most social medias. I've actually been relatively active on Threads lately. I'm giving that a try until I get bored of that too. Under Gina Does Things.
Do it today, people. Check it out. Josh Hollis does all of our artwork. Go to joshhollis.com for that kind of service. Or you can go to Revenge Body Memphis at bandcamp.com to find this theme and all the other remixes that we have. Boy, we're having fun talking about Evil Dead vampires and all the weirdness in between. Next week, more weirdness. We're going back to weird. We bounce back and forth. You never know what we're going to talk about. Follow us on socials for more heads up on that. But I think we got a fun movie and a fun guest to talk about it. Until then, the body count will continue. For myself and for Gina, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.